Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast this week, the Camber Karting podcast, your best source for karting fun. That's what we're going to say now, I guess. So we have a monster, a mega, a huge, absolutely over-the-fence sized podcast this week. We have two guests coming on the show later. We have a great topic. We have a lot of news to report and give some shout outs. So, I guess we'll get started. I want to remind everybody for the first time to like and subscribe to us on YouTube. And we are also on anchor.fm right now and on Spotify. So subscribe to our podcast on there, the Camber Karting podcast. All right. So, let's see. Let's get started with the news. So the first thing this is a big news week, guys. So Chris, the first thing we got this week is, we'll go with the newest thing. Bubba Wallace has reported that he is going to be leaving Richard Petty Motorsports at the end of the season.
Yeah, oh man, I'm a Bubba Wallace fan, and the Bubba Wallace fan nation, we've been scratching our heads. He had that, a little bit of an offer from Ganassi, but he also had that, rumored the option to get partial ownership of Richard Petty Motorsports. And so, as a young racer, that's not an offer you just, flat out refuse. But, so we've waited with bated breath for a couple of months now. To see, where Bubba would decide to go, since his stock has gone up substantially in the past couple of months. And, while we're only getting part of the news that he's leaving, I'm eager to see where he goes. I hope he ends up going to Ganassi. I think that'll be an instantaneous increase in performance. Richard Petty Motorsports has been a lame duck in recent seasons, so I think he made the prudent choice.
Yeah, I think it's been talked about several times that their performance is not anywhere where it needs to be or has been in many distant years past. So I think he made the good choice. It pains me to see him go out of the 43 car, being a fan of the 43 car. I run the number 43. But he's got to go where he's got to go and where he's going to be competitive, and I fully support that. And I'm really happy to see that, his stock rising. It sounds like he's probably got a bunch of sponsorship on board to go somewhere, and I hope it works out for him. I really do. I want to see him in the winner's circle. I want to see him there regularly. He is an awesome dude. So, real quick, money on where do you think he's going?
Ooh. The big shuffles that we originally, heard rumored were Stewart-Haas or Ganassi. But I think Stewart-Haas locked in their drivers recently, so I'm going to go with probably Ganassi. Chip expressed a lot of interest in having him, and if Chip could make not one but two major celebrity driver announcements in a fortnight with the Jimmy Johnson announcement, I think Chip would jump at that opportunity.
Yeah. I would say my money is probably, the short list is probably Ganassi for him, which it is interesting. We're just gonna say it's an interesting story how that ride opened up, and I really couldn't think of any. It's ironic, yeah. But I really couldn't think of anyone better to step into that ride for next season. And, it has been an interesting year. 2020 has been so 2020 at this point. So, but that's where my money is, really, thinking he's going to go there. So it'll be interesting to see.
One more thought on that.
Yeah.
I know this kind of ties into our topic that we'll go over later, but I was thinking about reasons that he might have stayed at Richard Petty Motorsport. if you're trying to establish a legacy and to give others a leg up into the sport, getting into team ownership is a good way to do that. But at the same time, he saw the point of his career where he wants to focus on driving. But I just thought that was an interesting,
Yeah.
interesting crossover there.
Yeah, absolutely. There comes a time when you look at team ownership and running a team, but I don't think he is there yet. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. I guess while we're in NASCAR, we'll go to this. I guess this was the first piece of news that dropped this week. By a few hours was NASCAR announced that Fontana Auto Club Speedway, however you want to call it, is going to be converted to a short track.
Yeah, now that's a bombshell. It's unprecedented, really. You've seen tracks go from small to big, but to take a track with that much infrastructure and to take it down to short track size, it's a gamble. I mean, I think it's a calculated gamble. They know that that's what the fans have been clamoring for, and they want to maintain an anchor in that market, and it's cheaper than starting from scratch. But at the same time, I think we're gonna end up losing something that is the fastest closed course circuit in the world. That's where Gilles de Ferran put down his absolute burner of a lap in 2000, I think it was.
Yeah,
so
241.
241.428.
Yep.
Which
it's tough to see it go, but I understand. It is a NASCAR owned track. Is that through ISC? I think it is, which they recently acquired.
I want to say it's ISC.
And the rules package right now really is not becoming to a lot of the cookie cutter tracks and the super speedways necessarily. So the short tracks, it does make for more interesting racing. So I'd say it's a positive. It is going to lose a lot of history there. But times change. We got to keep moving forward. And so, I think they made a good decision there. Would I have preferred to see some old tracks come back on the schedule, like, say, North Wilkesboro? Yes.
Oh, see, I've got a special place in my heart for that track.
Yeah. I would love to see those places come back on the schedule.
Yeah, I was thinking that if they were going to make it I saw the layout and it looks like a cross between Martinsville and Memphis Motorsports Park. Almost a symmetrical paperclip oval, maybe with a slight dogleg on the front stretch.
Yeah, it looks like it's kind of I would call it like a D oval of short tracks, to be honest.
Right.
So.
And I was wondering, if they're going to go with that, if they were going to go with the short track, why couldn't they go with something, maybe one of those odd layouts like, I know Nazareth and Phoenix are both 1 milers, but I thought that maybe going with a 3/4 mile like Iowa and then giving it some flavor might have been the way to go. But we'll see. We'll see.
It'd be really fun if they made it. Remind me of the name of the old IndyCar or the or I guess a USAC circuit that was the complete circle.
Langhorne.
It'd be interesting if they remade a Langhorne, Hugh Alley there.
Oh, yeah, that that brings up another thing. NASCAR needs to get back on dirt with the Cup Series. Just gonna say it. Just gonna say it.
No, I think the trucks have proven that it is a really fun show on dirt. With them going to Eldora, and obviously, I believe ARCA. Do they still do dirt races?
Yep, Springfield and DuQuoin.
Yeah, Springfield and DuQuoin, the two Illinois State Fairgrounds. So yeah, ARCA does a good show on dirt. So I think absolutely we need to get the Cup back on dirt and bring in some more dirt fan base there because there's such a disconnect. I feel now. At one point they were very close, but now I feel that the dirt guys, being a sprint car fan and late models and things like that, it's a completely different world, completely different application. So it'd be really neat to see the Cup Series on dirt. So yeah. So the big news in America is the announcement, and this came out not that long, like a few hours after Fontana announcement, Jimmie Johnson next season will be headed to IndyCar, and it will be for 2021 and 2022 with Chip Ganassi Racing. Woo!
Oof. Yeah. Well, it means I can stop being a closet Jimmie Johnson fan and fly my flag proudly. Um, but it's gonna. I think we are getting into a renaissance of crossover drives for professional racers, and this is I think if you brought this up 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of us would have sold our right foot to see that happen, and here we are, and our feet are still intact. So, yeah, man, I just, I hope it doesn't end up being a flop. I think that he is a good enough just racer in general that he'll be able to um they'll be able to perform well. I think there's going to be a learning curve.
Yeah.
But he seems to, like, even during the quarantine in the spring, he seemed to be jumping into it with both feet, reconfiguring his simulator and everything. So I'm super excited. What do you think?
Oh, to me, I think he's going to do just fine. It'll probably take him a season to get acclimatized, but you got to remember who his teammates are going to be, specifically the one teammate that I don't necessarily like, but man, he's massively talented, Mr. Scott Dixon. So when you've got that behind you and all the engineering knowledge there at Ganassi and the season they've had with, it's just, it's phenomenal going forward. But to me, it's bittersweet, extra special. That's what we'll put it. That's how I'll put it, because being a Jeff Gordon fan in the 90s, growing up with that, I really wanted to see him go to the 500. I really wanted to see him come over to IndyCar. That really seemed like the manifest destiny, if you will, of his career. And it never happened. Like, such a superstar. While he wasn't from Indiana, he was a transplant here, and we claimed him.
Yep.
And his open wheel prowess in a sprint car and midgets, it was just stupendous. And then he did the test in the Williams car, the ride swap with Juan Pablo at Indy. And it was just one of those, I always wanted to see him come to the 500. He was my favorite driver, and that is like the big race. And to see him come there would have been great. See him come to IndyCar would have been great. So that time has passed. But now we get his protege, the man he brought into the sport and turned into one of the greatest drivers, one of the 3 7-time champions. And it's bittersweet to see that it isn't Gordon doing it, but from the video I seen and from all the talk from Jimmy, he is so passionate about this. Like, he is excited. Like, with NASCAR stuff, he kind of looks a little worn out at times, compared to his early career, but man, he's excited about this. Like, he has that pep in his step. He's bubbly. I'm really happy to see him coming over and doing this. And I hope he, will make the 500 at some point. He's been open to it. He said he's open to it, but it's not on the schedule for now. He's looking at doing road and street courses only. And it will be very interesting, and I really hope that he finds success here, and I'm excited for it. And I hope he gets to carry the number 48 over.
Yeah, I think one of the draws is just from a family perspective. With NASCAR, you're gone. But NASCAR is what, 36 points races?
Yeah.
Plus
IndyCar is significantly less than that.
Exactly, and his kids are his kids are what, middle school age now, and I think he seems to be very much a family guy. So I think he's really going to enjoy that opportunity to be home more.
Yeah. So hopefully that all works out. I know it's sponsorship pending right now on a lot of stuff, but I think it would be silly for sponsors to kind of sit on the sideline and not jump at this. I know we're kind of in a bad place with the economy with the pandemic, but man, that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I think that's great, and that is truly going to rock the world. So getting on to more driver movement, the big world news this week was, I guess it's been a day ago now, Sergio Perez announced that he was leaving Racing Point Formula One team at the end of the season. Racing Point, for those of you who don't know, was the team formerly known as Force India. Perez has been there for, oh my gosh, a long time. He's been their real perennial driver and kind of one of their setup guys. And when Lawrence Stroll came in and bought the team with his consortium of backers, it was definitely really neat to see Perez stay there and really kind of remain the point man there and kind of get Lance Stroll up to speed. But he is not coming back for next season, and there was speculation that who it was going to be and where Perez was going to go. But then today, literally right before the Tuscan Grand Prix this weekend, Ferrari's 1000th race, their special edition livery on the car, Sebastian Vettel announced that he would indeed be in that car for next year, which the team is switching over to the Aston Martin Racing branding for next year. So
talk
really
about stealing the spotlight.
Yeah. Really took the hot air out of that balloon. So, your thoughts, Chris?
Props to Vettel for just one-upping Ferrari in the most epic way. But also, I'm glad to, it's clear Sebastian Vettel was not happy at Ferrari, and while I know that Racing Point / Aston Martin, I haven't necessarily had the world's best pace. Although that podium or that their finish at Monza was a shocker.
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think just a change of scenery will be good for him.
I can see now, when Vettel first came into the sport, he was very stereotypical wonderkind.
Yep.
He was out there for wins. And I can appreciate that. That was what his job was. That was literally the main line in his contract, I think, win races. And when you're in the Red Bull development program, you either win races or you get dropped. So
yep.
I understand that. And he was young and he had to impress. So his 4 championships in a row, it was a bit of a snoozer for me, but I've always admired Vettel because he's handled things really well, for being so young. Now coming into Ferrari, a lot of people thought that this was going to be the Michael Schumacher type deal. He's emulating his hero. He's going to Ferrari. This big, Ferrari dynasty is going to begin. But really, he brought his talent, but I don't think Ferrari brought the technical side of it much at all. And this year has been really a bad showing for them, like a horrible showing. And I'm really happy to see him getting out of there because he's just appeared so worn down. He's married, I think. He has a family now. But he just, and he's changed for the better, I feel like. You start to see the human side of him. You start to see him have some emotion. And really, he has a passion for the sport. You can tell. And I feel like this last couple of years with Ferrari has just absolutely drained it out of him. He looks lifeless. And now I think at the very least, he's going to have a chance to get that passion back. Actually challenge for positions and not be a write-off in qualifying completely. Because I feel like Racing Point / Aston Martin is moving forward, even though they, did the ultimate no-no of completely copying a car this year. It worked.
Yeah.
So
props to them for going for it, right?
Yeah. Now the next question was where does that put Perez? Well, Perez apparently, if I read this correctly, he had contracts in place already, and basically they bought out his contract. So he was not preparing to leave the team at all. This really came out of nowhere for him, from what he is, from what I've read in the news. So where does that leave him? There's not a lot of. There's speculation that he may go to Alfa Romeo, the former Sauber team, because he raced for them before. Depending on what the situation is with their drivers, it's appearing that Kimi Räikkönen may possibly be retiring next year. It just seems like things aren't going as well for him there. Obviously, the car is nowhere near as competitive.
Right.
So there's that possibility. Perez could take that, but that's also a Ferrari engine team, so they're looking to move up, a junior driver possibly. Today, the news broke that Haas is considering, they have options on the table for their drivers because both their driver contracts are up at the end of the season. So it will be interesting to see where that takes Haas. That could be a landing spot for Perez. They said that he's kind of on the short list. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. Other than that, I don't know where he would end up at this point, to be honest. A lot of seats have been filled. It'll be very interesting to see where he goes. But I would like to see him maybe go with Haas, try and build up some setup knowledge there, because I feel like Perez is definitely, he may not be the winner, but he's the seasoned veteran who can probably set up the car. And that's something I feel that like Haas really needs right now.
I'll be honest. Calling Perez a seasoned veteran is making me start to feel old.
I know, right?
Wow. Okay.
But he is. I think he's been with Racing Point now, or Force India, for like 5 seasons at least, maybe more. So it's been a while.
It just, I guess it just reflects the fact that the driver lineup in Formula One is skewing younger and younger each year.
Yeah, I heard it mentioned that on the short list for Alfa Romeo and Haas is Michael Schumacher's son.
Yeah, he's going to be running the F2004 at Mugello this weekend, I believe, as tribute to his dad.
So that'll be interesting. But yeah, it's definitely skewing much younger, and it's going to be something. So yeah, there's that. Next big piece of motorsports news, I guess big motorsports. And if you haven't realized this yet, hopefully this episode, I can get this out before all this happens. But the Mid-Ohio IndyCar race is back on for this weekend. After meeting with I guess all the officials about the health and safety with the pandemic, they decided to go ahead and have everything be on for this weekend. So it's a doubleheader at Mid-Ohio, and I believe fans are going to be in attendance. So
if I remember correctly, I think they've capped it 6,000 fans.
Yeah,
which that's for a track the size of Mid-Ohio. Yeah, I guess that would be, that makes sense. Yeah, there's enough room to wander, and it is in the middle of nowhere. So, but yeah, that's always a good race, and it's a doubleheader. So,
yeah, it'll be an interesting weekend. I'm excited. I say I'm excited, but I'm fearful for the Ganassi sweep that is possible, because Scott Dixon's really on his game, and this is one of his best tracks.
Yeah, I've got to give a plug for my boy Pato O'Ward and the Aero McLaren SP team. I think Pato has been on form. Not Scott Dixon form, because Scott Dixon is otherworldly. But I think that I'm hoping that youthful exuberance will be worth something this weekend.
Yeah, it would be neat to see them break through. Pato's really been up there. He wants it, and he's been driving like he wants it. So, although Scott Dixon always seems to come through at least in one of the races if it's a doubleheader, and to be honest, Sato, even after the 500's been really hungry. So,
hey, no attack, no chance, dude.
No attack, no chance. We will see. But it'd be really neat to see a Dixon Sato Pato three-way battle at the end. I can't lie, that'd be really cool. On to the karting news. I know this is a karting podcast, and we're finally getting to the karting news. Normally, there's not that much karting news, but we've had a couple big news pieces come this week. In the karting world, T&T Kartways in Quincy, Illinois, really one of the staples, one of the most famous kart tracks in North America, one of the older ones, is getting a repave. Finally. It's needed it for a long time, and it's really, really great to see them do that. That track has been just absolutely monumental in the karting world. That was, I think, the one time that we got the ABC Wide World of Sports was covering nationals there, I believe. So, and that was back in the 60s or 70s. So that'll be really interesting. I know I've driven on that track a couple times, and in the vintage series, and within a span of 2 or 3 corners, you get like 4 track surfaces from the various attempts at repaving. So you have the original pavement, which we refer to as polished rock. You get an oil-based sealant, a rubber-based sealant, and then you get, I think you do get some different asphalt patch in a few places, and then you get the concrete because they had added onto the track with concrete. So it is a very interesting track to drive on. And I know this is in part due to the fact that, and you may not know this, Chris, the track is literally right next to the Mississippi River.
So I'm guessing erosion and flooding.
Yeah, whenever the Mississippi comes out of its banks and they talk about Mississippi flooding, that track is underwater most of the time. So they've had a lot to deal with that, and I think that's why they had a fair amount of concrete put in at one point. So, but they are getting a repave on most of the original sections of the track, and I'm really happy to see that. And they want to move forward. I know they are a big they're a big proponent of the Margay Ignite series. That's one of the main series that runs there. So I'm really glad to see that, and I hope to make it to a vintage race there at some point in the future to see how that surface goes. So hats off to them for doing that and kind of revitalizing that track. The last piece of news, which is also karting related, is the big piece of karting news this week, and kind of really actually falls close to home for Chris and I, is the WKA, World Karting Association, announced this week that they were moving the final round of the Manufacturers Cup Championship. And I had heard about this, but I didn't know if it was going to happen. But it is finally happening. It has been moved to October 23rd through the 25th, and it will be happening at Whiteland Raceway Park in Whiteland, Indiana.
Yeah. Yep. And that's great because, it's, think about where Whiteland was, just a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Gosh.
The thought of hosting, one of the premier karting series in North America, especially for the season finale, that's talk about a 180, man.
Yeah, I think they're going to do that. Plus, they have it's the WKA America series. So that looks to be, I'm not sure, I don't know about that series as much, but the WKA America series and Manufacturers Cup series are both going to combine and have their season championships there. So it is going to be a really big weekend. I really want to make it there to, just to watch it. I've been to WK at Daytona, and that was a big deal. But to have it come to our home track, oh my gosh, it's historical, I think, to say the least, because this track has hosted, I don't remember if they've hosted WK Nationals, but I know they've hosted IKF back in the day.
Do they host do they host the Pro Karting Association back in the 70s?
They might have. Don't quote me exactly on that. If anyone listening to this has knowledge of that, please let me know. I'm going to try and check my sources. But they might have. But it's been a wild ride for them, from almost being bulldozed, literally being within days of being bulldozed, to now hosting the World Karting Association Championship finale. for sprint racing. It's such a 180, and I can't, we gush over them all the time, but that's a big deal, guys. I'm really happy to see them doing this, and I hope going forward we can get some more national races in there. It's a small track, but it has a lot more configurations now. They've definitely put the money into it, and they've put the love, the heart into it. So I guess once again, a little hats off to Andy O'Gara and Sarah Fisher. Really,
absolutely,
you guys have done a great job. So,
and I think that it's the type of track that needs to be preserved in karting. I think it's a very organic, flowing track compared to some of the layouts that are more, I guess we'll say European style these days.
Yes.
So I think it's it will be a benefit to any young karter who gets to race there.
And somebody a lot of people may disagree with me, but my favorite road race course to race on is Mid-Ohio. It's very organic. It's very flowing. You get elevation changes. It just feels right. And it's short enough that even in an enduro kart, it feels like you're busy. You're doing something the whole time. Whiteland is very much the same feel for me. It's not a very big course. It's got some elevation change. It flows more with the landscape. It's a very classic style track. So yeah, it's absolutely one that needs to stick around. It's one of the few classic karting tracks that is, I think, withstood the test of time configuration wise. So now that they have more configurations that they can use, I'm excited. It's going to be exciting. And then I think it's before that, we've got the VK Vintage Karting Association will be there, and I hope to be running that weekend. So it's, they got 2 national series, 3 national series if you count the WK America the same weekend as Man Cup. 3 national series coming through in October. Such a big deal for them, and I'm excited. And earlier this year, I believe they hosted a round of the Margay Ignite Championship. So it's just been, throughout this pandemic, to see them have all this good fortune come their way is great. So once again, hats off to them. So before we get on with the rest of the program tonight, we got a couple shout outs. Chris, you want to give yours first?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to give a shout out to Braden Eves. In true racer fashion, as soon as he was well enough to leave the hospital, he was out at Newcastle Motorsports Park. So props to him. We know it's a long road for him to recover, and if I'm not mistaken, I think his family's got a GoFundMe to help with that. So please consider that. But yeah, we're just glad that he's able to stay engaged with racing in some capacity. So hope you get better soon, Braden.
Yeah, it was a truly horrific crash. We talked about this. We gave him a shout out last episode, but to see him, I think it was literally hours after he got out of the hospital. He was in a neck brace and he was out at Newcastle with the Willpower Kart team, supporting his family there and his friends. He's a true racer. So hats off to you, man. Give you a shout out. I know the season's gone, but you're going to get back in that car. So good for him. And I guess last shout out of the night, I want to give a shout out to my dad real quick. He's a regular listener on this this podcast, and he's been fighting cancer lately, and this is one of his few things he gets to do is listen to this. So shout out to you, man. As I say at the end of the podcast, keep on keeping on. You got this. So on to the main event tonight. So everybody out there, we always try to do some engaging topic. And that's, I feel like, what kind of sets us apart. We're not just bench racing. We're not just reporting the news. We try to do a little bit of everything, but we always try to have one big major topic per episode. And this week, I feel like we're hitting on a major topic definitely this year, but a major topic overall. And we decided to go ahead and tackle diversity in motorsports and, all the sides of it. And we realized that between Chris and I, we couldn't say much to that. I definitely can't say much to that. So we decided to bring in 2 guests. So we have 4 people on here tonight. talking about this. And we want to introduce them right now. We will go ahead and introduce them right now. So first of all, back on the program from last week, we have Mr. Andrew McCaul. Welcome back, Andrew.
Hello. Thank you for having me again. For some reason, this place seems kind of familiar. I don't know why.
It's the shininess.
Yeah, shiny.
And then this week, introducing for the first time ever, somebody we got to know through Purdue Grand Prix, our friend and fellow racer, Jenna Soukup.
Hello. Thanks for having me on here.
Not a problem. Thank you for coming on here. So we got some really good questions that Chris and I thought through this week. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to kind of MC, and I'm going to let you guys do all the answering of the questions. So to do this, I guess I'm going to ask the question, and then I'll probably have, for the sake of things, Jenna, if you want to go first, since you're the newest.
Okay.
And then I guess state your demographic, and then move forward, and then we'll move on to Andrew, and then we'll move on to Chris, and then I'll move on from there. So that's how the game plays, folks. If you're playing along out there, that's how it goes. But this is going to be a really cool episode. So diversity in motorsports. So getting started. So the three of you didn't necessarily come from racing backgrounds. What drew each of you to pursue an interest and eventually a career in motorsport?
I guess I'll chime in first. I actually kind of got into racing just by watching the Pixar movie Cars when I was a kid, back when that came out in like 2006. I was like only 6 or 7 years old at the time. But once I saw that, I was just like, ooh, shiny, fast-moving cars. And I don't know, I was kind of hooked. I got into NASCAR the next year, and it was just, love at first sight.
Okay. Actually, before we get any farther, you realize how old that makes me feel now? You were 6 or 7 when that movie came out. I was... When did that come out? Was that 2006 or 2007?
06.
06? Yeah, I was on my way out of high school at that point. Thanks. But anyway.
F in the chat, guys. F in the chat.
So, Jenna, how did you get into this?
Yeah. I grew up in Indianapolis, which was part of it. I guess I grew up in Indianapolis, and I wanted to be a fighter jet pilot when I was little. So I've always liked fast machines. And my parents took me to Indy 500 practices and stuff when I was little. And that kind of got me hooked as a fan. But then it wasn't until I got involved with Purdue Grand Prix in college that I really realized I could be a part of motorsports, that I didn't have to just watch, that I loved being in the middle of the chaos, kind of.
Okay. And Chris, what about you?
Oh boy. I was so I grew up in Charlotte, which is, the heart of NASCAR country, and my mom was a fan of NASCAR, but I never really thought that was something that I could do, right? So I grew up loving cars, and anytime I could, get in a go-kart, at an amusement park, or once I finally, bought my own, I did that. But it wasn't until I was about 13 or 14. I was at a indoor, rental go-kart track, and one of the guys working there said that, it's like, oh yeah, you're pretty good at it. And just to be told that you've got some sort of talent, right? And then for someone to actually explain that that's a gateway into this sport that you're a fan of, that really, just being told that it was possible, right?
Yeah.
That just flipped a switch, and I never looked back.
That's cool. So I guess the main, let's answer this first before we get on to the next question. What is everyone's different demographic that they're representing tonight? What is everyone bringing to the table? So whoever wants to go first.
Well, mine, you can tell from my voice. I'm female. That's the, I guess, different demographic I bring.
Women racing. Good.
Yeah, and I'm part Caucasian, part Japanese. My mom was actually from Japan, but my dad's from Virginia, so I'm kind of mixed there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm African American. Grew up in kind of a weird situation down south. So yeah, that's me.
Okay. So we have a really good representation here, and I'm just your garden variety Caucasian male. So that's why I want everyone else to speak and tell their stories. So the next question that's really cool. Were there any initiatives that you knew of prior to entering racing? Like, if so, what was your perception of those? And did you make use of them in any way?
Oh, I did not know of any like diversity initiatives in motorsports, but I didn't grow up in a racing family. To be honest, I didn't know that karting outside of like amusement park type things existed until I got to college. So I didn't know of any initiatives, but I didn't know anything about karting or motorsports in general. So I may not be a good example for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew of the NASCAR Drive for Diversity program. I forget exactly when that started, but I wasn't into the whole driving thing I wanted to be more on the engineering side. And I didn't really know what resources were available, to get more diverse demographics into the engineering fields of motorsports until I found out there was actually a NASCAR diversity internship program that I found out while I was at Purdue.
I think I remember, sorry to interject here, but I think I remember one of the previous interns with that, Earl. Remember his last name now?
Earl Hart.
Yep, Earl Hart. Yeah, he was really cool. Great driver, and he ended up being he was for a long time when he did that was a tech man with NASCAR. So that was really cool. I had a lot of good conversations with Earl, and I miss him. I don't know what he's doing nowadays. What about you, Chris?
I like Andrew. I knew about the Drive for Diversity, but I didn't find out about it till after I committed to pursuing racing as a lifelong passion. It was probably in high school by the time I found out about it. And I thought that you had to come from a short track, late model stock car legends car background, and B, I saw, I watched the K&N Pro Series East back when it was broadcast on the Speed Channel, and that's where most of the Drive for Diversity cars were. That's the series they were fielded in. And outside of Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson and Daniel Suarez, you didn't see many of those cars or drivers excel or move up to the next level. So I was kind of concerned that okay, maybe I was concerned about whether that would be a dead end. So I just I was dead set on going to college anyways. So I kind of decided that just wasn't for me. But I definitely had this perception that it was only for if you had a certain background, and that's I'm willing to admit that I was wrong about that. I think it's been shown that there are people from more than just stock car backgrounds who can benefit from that program.
The next question we have is, what kind of reception did you receive when you first got involved in racing?
So for me, I was really lucky that my first real introduction to a racing team was the Society of Women Engineers team, karting team at Purdue. And it was excellent to have my first motorsports environment be an all-female one, just because it was more guaranteed to not have bias in it. Ideally, I don't think that like women need their own separate category or anything. So I wish that wasn't the environment that was perfect for that. I wish that that worked differently, but it was a really, really good environment to learn in, and to not, I guess I didn't encounter the situations where I felt like, oh, a guy would probably know how to do this better than me kind of a thing, because there weren't any guys around. It just kind of was by default. A girl had to do whatever technical thing there was to do, and it was really good.
Cool. Yeah, that was something. Definitely, when working with all the Purdue teams, the Society of Women Engineers was arguably one of the most independent teams, and I admire that greatly, to be honest here. So that was really neat to see. Andrew, what about you? What kind of reception did you receive?
I'm also very lucky to say that it was pretty welcoming, because I started my motorsports journey with Christian when I was a freshman at Purdue. And we really just grew into, learning more about karting together. And, it was just a really valuable learning experience, getting to know each other for, yes, our similarities, but also, our inherent differences, and just embracing that,
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one. Chris, what about you?
Well, first of all, Andrew, thanks for that. I tried to make it as welcoming as an environment as I could. Yeah, I guess starting out, a couple years ahead of Andrew, it was a weird reception. Corey meeting you and going to the kart shop, I felt like a member of the family immediately. But there's sometimes I'd go to the track. Like the first time I went to Whiteland, I got some weird looks. Not hostile looks, just utterly confused looks, like they'd seen a unicorn. And there were, I'll admit, there were a couple times where you knew you were under extra scrutiny, because there were times where I was one of only a few, if not the only person of color driving in Grand Prix. But the that was more from an older contingent. In terms of from my peers, I gotta say that was the reception I got from my peers was better than anything I could have hoped for. Coming from the South, I had kind of steeled myself for this for a negative reaction, but it was the reaction was such that I can look back on my time there fondly.
Well, that's good. Yeah, Chris kind of became my the little brother I never had, I guess, in my whole time there. Because when we hired Chris to work at the shop, that was really it kind of came down to two people, and for some reason I got the overriding vote on it, and I got Chris in there to help to work with me, because I was most excited to have him in there, and I wanted to learn about what he'd seen, what he'd been able to do, because he's a heck of a driver. And also, you're quick, man.
Oh, thank you.
But also, he was a really cool guy, and I was like, yes, I need Chris. And it was really important to me to see that. So he kind of became my little brother throughout the years, and that's why we do the podcast. Andrew, not in a negative way, you were kind of the tag along with that kind of came into the conversation. And
Andrew
I can't
became my little brother.
Yeah, I can't think of Chris without Andrew. And then Jenna, everyone at Society of Women Engineers has been a huge part of my career. Definitely working with driver coaching all the way back. I can't even remember who I started with now. But working with your drivers through the years and being able to see them go from having a few pretty lean years, and then seeing the team build back up, and seeing an independent team build back up, and then making the show, having both, expanding to 2 cars, having both cars make the show. It was really impressive from your organization. So that says a lot to your leadership, Jenna.
We had fun with it. I remember, I know you coached, well, I can think of at least 3 drivers that you did. I know that you coached. I know I've been on a track walk with you, and one of them, I still have the notes in my phone from the track walk at Whiteland.
Oh my gosh.
I'm planning on. Yeah.
I think I started with Agnes.
Okay. I never even met her, so it's been a while.
Because you had Marissa there she was a longtime driver, and then the team kind of started to fall apart, and Agnes came in for like a year or two. And I think that's when I was brought into driver coach. So I started with Agnes, and then I think moved on to Emma. I think Emma was the first one, and then Mari, and then working with Kate to a certain extent. So probably 4 drivers now.
So. I didn't meet Agnes, but I think I had heard Emma talk about her. So that sounds like the right order. I'm not sure.
And I think I was brought in to help coach because I had coached female racers in dirt racing. I think that was the only reason that I got referred to that job. My now wife, she was a very formidable dirt racer. I will never, ever live the fact down that the only race that, I guess, one of 2 races that we officially raced against each other, she kicked my butt in the first one. She absolutely kicked my butt. And I'm proud of her for that. But that was, a big deal at our track. But I think I coached 2 other female racers before that at the dirt track, and it just came from the fact that I'd been there for so long. We've been pitting next to them, and finally, I think it was like their dad said, "Hey, can you help teach them some, something about this because we're new?" And I'm like, "Sure." So, anyway, moving on to the next question. Were you surprised to find more people of your demographic involved in the sport?
I guess I grew up kind of the Indy 500 era that I grew up watching was when Danica Patrick and Sarah Fisher and I think there were like 5 female drivers in the 500 one year.
This is a challenge. I need to see if I can name them real quick. I try to remember all these. So
I think I got 2 of them.
We had Catherine Legg, Anna Beatrice, Simona Di Silvestro. I'd like to say Pippa Man. And I think Danica was gone at that point.
Okay.
So I think there's 4 that I know of.
Oh, what about Milka Duno?
She was gone by that point.
Okay.
I think she left before they got the DW12 car.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was all of them for that year.
Okay. So that was, I think, like middle school era, like age group or age range for me was when that happened, if I remember right at all, which I think that would make sense because the DW12 was like my freshman or sophomore year of high school. But yeah, I guess that's kind of the motorsport I grew up watching and I can remember watching. So that's kind of the male-female split that I expected. So when I got to Purdue and watched the karting race my sophomore year for the first time, I didn't get involved with it till I was a junior. I guess seeing the like 2 or 3 female teams, it looked like about the split that I had seen in other places. But then like when I went on the Wikipedia page that has all the winners from Grand Prix, and I saw that there was only 1 female winner in the entire history, and then like watching the 500 and there's no female winners, I don't know. I started to have more of a wake-up call of like, yeah, there's some women here, but we don't have an even enough split yet to really find all of the ones that will be successful at this. So that was kind of a disappointment. Definitely disappointment.
Yeah. And I guess to add to this question, this is for everybody. Who, if anybody, would be role models? Was there anybody that caught your attention?
There is somebody I would say, and which would have been a great answer until about 4 months ago. Kyle Larson.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mr. High, wide, and handsome.
yeah, a guy can just a magician inside any kind of dirt car he goes in, and I think we have the exact same racial makeup. Like he's half Japanese, and I'm half Japanese. So I thought, when he kind of rose up into NASCAR in 2014, he was a guy I, kind of looked to as an image of, somebody like me can make it in NASCAR or in racing.
Yeah. He made some questionable decisions, but there is no doubting he is an amazing race driver. Like, that man has got talent. But yeah, Jenna, was there anyone that
Not really. I think I can remember cheering for Danica Patrick a little bit when I was in middle school, but I never, once she got out of IndyCar, I didn't even think about it anymore. And say with both engineering and motorsports, I think I had met a female engineer once before I got to Purdue. So I didn't even know what a female engineer was supposed to look like, let alone in motorsport. That's an even more male-dominated environment. So I really was just kind of flying blind going into it a little bit.
When I think of women in motorsport, one of the first names that come to mind, besides, Janet Guthrie, Lynn St. James, really these pioneers of, IndyCar, but the first name that comes to mind, especially with engineering, and I hope I pronounce her last name correctly, but Lena Gade.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Lena Gade is, she didn't have a good run at IndyCar for various reasons, but man, she is just a down-and-out amazing engineer. And to see what she did with the Audi factory team at Le Mans, just, whew. No matter how you slice it, she is an amazing engineer, someone to look up to for everyone.
There's a little, I'm in IUPUI's motorsports program now, and there's a little group we all look up to her because it's like, oh, Lena did like this such and such thing. She's really cool. So I guess now that I'm more into the motorsports world, we look up to women like that. But I didn't know she existed until a couple years ago.
So Andrew, I guess getting back to the original question, were you surprised to find more people of your demographic involved in the sport?
I guess from a strictly Purdue standpoint, I wasn't super surprised. I guess also that certain demographics had their own groups, like SWE being an all-women's team, and Nesby, who I think got back into it a couple of years ago. Nesby, as in the National Society of Black Engineers. And there is another team comprised of mainly Asian American individuals.
Okay.
So I guess I wasn't surprised that they were involved and that they kind of kept to themselves from what I saw. I do wish there was some more integration there, which is partially why I value mine and Christian's partnership so much, is that we could learn so much from each other.
Yeah.
Both technically and socially.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think we even had, I don't know if they've run in recent years, but CHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers.
Yep.
They were always a big, kind of a powerhouse team for a long time.
Yeah, I think they were only there my freshman year or something like that.
Chris, what about you? Were you surprised to find more people of your demographic involved?
To be honest, yeah. I was shocked. Just because, so I grew up in a predominantly, I was a generally mixed area of Charlotte, North Carolina, right? So I got exposed to predominantly people of Caucasian descent, but also people of Southeast Asian descent, Indian, all sorts of people, but not a whole lot of people of my own race. And even the people I did get exposed to, the only racing fans that I met that were African American, most of the time I was related to them. you know.
Gotcha.
So when I came, I always, so I grew up feeling like a bit of an outsider, even within my own race. So when I came to Purdue and found out there was a Nesby, like that Nesby, had a team, because I think they attempted to run my freshman year and then came back for my fourth year and my fifth year, because it took me a minute. But I was genuinely surprised, pleasantly surprised. I met one of my best friends, Connor, through racing at Purdue. I was genuinely surprised that I wasn't alone in my passion for motorsports. And that's one of those, a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one.
Cool. And the next part of that question is, did you who were if any of your role models for this?
Okay, so we're gonna do a bit of a throwback here. When I was a kid, I played NASCAR 04, NASCAR 06 on my PlayStation, and even though I wasn't watching NASCAR at the time, I was like, okay, who am I gonna use as my driver, right? And there was one person of color, and that was Bill Lester. Okay. And so I kind of latched on to him as kind of someone I looked up to, especially when he went to Grand Am and was racing the Camaros. And my parents loved him as an icon, because he started out as an engineer, and then got into sports car racing, and then got into NASCAR, which is kind of the path I'm trying to take. So he was a person that I really looked up to, and look up to more and more as I get older and move further along my path. But the real person who opened my eyes to, this is a thing that could happen, was Juan Montoya. Because by the time I was really watching NASCAR, or I was really paying attention, Bill Lester had already moved on. I don't think he'd gone to Grand Am yet, but I was doing a presentation on Colombia, and I was for my Spanish class, I was doing research, and I found out, there's a guy from Colombia named Juan Montoya who's in NASCAR. It's like, okay, I gotta see this. So, and he's been my hero ever since. So that it's funny, not necessarily part of my demographic, but a person of color nonetheless, who kind of that was the kick I needed to really pay attention and watch racing each weekend.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And Juan Montoya is definitely a heck of a driver. And I've said this before in the podcast. I would describe your driving style honestly very close to his, but you hit way less stuff.
Yeah. I'm trying to be an improvement, I guess.
So
lessons learned.
Yep. Remember, one of the things that we say here on the Off Camber Karting podcast: you can't roller skate in a buffalo herd.
You can't roller skate in a buffalo herd.
Yep. And hope springs eternal, but
indeed.
So the next question for everybody is: have you ever heard members of your community describe what kept them from getting involved in the sport?
I guess I'll take this one first. So, I guess what I've heard is that in the Black community, we have a passion for cars, right? We love cars. That it's just a thing, right? So it's not a lack of interest, but what I've heard is that just like I mentioned earlier, being told that it's possible, being shown that it's possible, so many barriers that we encounter, we've put up. Yeah, well, some of them are put there. I will not deny that, but some of them, we already kind of self-censor and stop ourselves because we just don't think it's possible. So I've heard a lot of people I've talked to say, I like racing. I wish I could get into it, but I don't see anyone who looks like me. And there's no escaping motorsport has a dark, racially charged past, right? But I think more than that, I think it's just, being shown that there could be a place for a person of color in motorsports, and then the financial aspect. Racing isn't cheap.
Yeah.
And I was lucky that I came up in a family that was very well off, and so when I did identify that this is something I wanted to do, my parents were able to support me in a couple of ways. But I know that a lot of people, of in my demographic don't have that same opportunity. And so I would hope to see some more initiatives towards, helping bridge that gap come along. And if I can do something to do that, that'd be, the pride of my life.
Jenna, how about you on this question? Have you ever heard of members of your community describe what kept them from getting involved in the sport?
I haven't heard it really put into words a lot. I guess the only exception I can think of is seeing Pippa Mann's social media, and she's talked about how basically it's really hard to get sponsorships because corporate sponsors are not super interested in women and sponsoring them. And yeah, that's kind of the only perspective I have that's actually been put into words. But I think a lot of it is it's how we raise girls. I was the crew chief for SWE my senior year, and we had an almost all freshman pit crew that year, so I wound up training a lot of people, and most of them, like when I came in, I had never worked with a socket wrench before, never done like any basic mechanical stuff, and all of these girls, or almost all of them, were in the same boat, and just there's kind of it was one of the most, I think, rewarding parts of being that crew, or being having that position my senior year, was getting to just teach them that the tools don't care who's holding them. They all came in with this kind of hesitancy, like this isn't something that I'll be good at, and you could tell they had learned that somewhere. And these are all high achieving academic, like girls who came out of high school with a lot of confidence, and into a top ranked engineering program. So like they already, like they're not afraid to do non-traditional jobs for a female already. They're in engineering school, but they still had, even these like confident set of girls would still have hesitancy when they were working with tools and working on a cart for the first time, because somewhere in their lives they had been told that they couldn't do that. And none of us ever really put it into words of where we learned that, but it definitely is there. And I agree with Chris. There's a big part of, if you can see someone who looks like you doing it, then it's 10 times easier to get into something. And a lot of girls we haven't seen women do this stuff, so it's really hard to imagine ourselves doing it.
It is definitely tough to sit back and see that. So I can definitely, I can see that there, and it's good to see, other people getting into it that are like you. Andrew, what about you on this?
I guess I'll admit I haven't heard directly from people of my own like demographic why they don't feel comfortable getting into racing, because I'll admit I haven't run into those of mixed race. But what I can do is I can really attest to what Kristen is saying, just because I've known him for so long. And I've actually stayed with him a couple times over spring break and gone to races. And there's one particular incident that really stands out to me. The second time I stayed with him over spring break last year, we went to a Wednesday night dirt karting event at Millbridge Speedway. For those not familiar with Millbridge is a tiny little dirt kart track in Mooresville, North Carolina, and it's pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Um,
I mean, that's true. That is true.
Yeah. But we love racing, of course, so we wanted to go there. And when we got out of the car to go to the ticket booth, Christian pulls something like out of his glove box, and it's a wrench. And he tells me, "You know what this is for, right?" And I just look and nod. I'm like, "Yeah." And I knew what that was for only because he had told me about his, experiences, with those natural, or not natural, inherent barriers that are there for those who aren't white at the racetrack. Christian, I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think I remember you telling me that someone told you once that, oh, you like racing, you're one of the good ones.
Yeah, that's I've heard that more than once. Being singled out. That is the that because. Sorry, let me collect my thoughts for a second. But
that's okay, man.
Because all of a sudden I have something in common with a person. I'm now, I'm one of the good representatives of my race, and that makes me an outlier. I guess to clarify the whole wrench thing, I, maybe out of stupidity, maybe just out of a deep-seated faith that people are better than I expect them, than we expect them to be. I've gone to a lot of tracks in the middle of nowhere by myself, right? And I have felt unsafe enough times that I just make it a standard practice to keep, a 17 millimeter wrench, in my pocket, just in case someone, possibly under the influence decides to put me in my place,
Yeah.
And I'm Corey and Jenna and Andrew, you all know this. I'm a very, very peaceful person, right? But I especially with taking Andrew with me, I felt responsible for our safety, right? So
yeah,
that's one of those, and I actually hesitated to even broach that subject, but that is one of the unfortunate realities, just about the location of some of these tracks. A lot of times you're going to be the only person that looks like you there, and some people might take exception to that. And when the beer is flowing and the emotions are high, and it's dark outside, you really have to. You have to be prepared.
Yeah, and I don't blame you for that. That's why, Chris said at one point, I used to dirt race all over the Midwest, and Chris wanted to go with me to a few of my old tracks that I'd raced at, and I was very hesitant to take him to some of these tracks. I think the racing would have been good. It would have been a really fun time, but I know the type, I don't know so much now, but I know at one point in time the type of people who raced at some of the tracks and their tendencies, and I just didn't want to put Chris in that situation. I care for you too much to do that.
I appreciate it, Corey. Thank you.
Like there are some tracks that I would take you to, but not all of them. Definitely not all of them, because even there's so much deep-seated hate within these tracks. It doesn't necessarily just go to anyone who is a person of color. It starts to go towards women in racing. I have seen that many times, and it starts to go towards any slight difference, if you have any difference at all, compared to the normal people there, and you get singled out, and it's just not a place to be at. Maybe a really fun track to race, the track itself, the surface, and whatnot, but people-wise, not a great place to be at. But then, like I said, there are some tracks I've been to that are complete opposite of that and are just great all the way around, and nobody really cares. So, yeah, I understand that there, and I don't blame you. So next question. What would you like to see change for your demographics in motorsports, and how would you like to be involved? Jenna, what would you like to see change, and how would you like to be involved in that?
Basically just that women be given an equal chance, which I don't know. I don't have a good way to flesh out all the details of that into a plan, but just, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of it is, I think it goes back to the way that we raise girls in our society is, I think there are more boys that get to try karting than girls, and then just statistics wise, that's why there's more of them that filter up to the top series. Because just statistics wise, if 2% of people who, or whatever it is, who try karting can have the talent to be a race car driver, but there's only a small group of girls who try karting, then it's not likely that we're going to find that 2% or whatever of women who can do racing professionally. And so, yeah, just something about how we treat girls versus boys in our society needs to change, so that, because I mean, it would only make motorsports stronger. The bigger of a pool you pull from, the better you get engineers and drivers and mechanics. You wind up with better talent if you pull from a bigger pool.
Absolutely.
So it would be good for the sport, but I don't know. I didn't grow up in karting, so I didn't have kind of the young girl experience of what the barriers are. I hear comments from like my peers about what they think of kind of the affirmative action type stuff that happens a little bit, very little bit, and how, I don't know, the negative perception towards that. So I guess ultimately motorsports it's a meritocracy. The best person should get the job, whether it's a driver or a mechanic or a manager, an engineer. And so I just ultimately would want women to be judged on their merit in whatever role, and to not even have their gender really play into it. As far as my role in that, I mean, ultimately my goal is to be an engineer in IndyCar, and I guess if kind of the biggest thing I can see is it goes back to if you can see someone who looks like you doing something, then it's a lot easier to work towards that. So I would hope that if I got onto a team, that I would be somebody that just, oh, there's a girl on that timing stand, or there's a woman on that timing stand. Like, women can do this. They are doing it. I would hope that would be helpful to kind of the next generation of women coming up through the system.
Absolutely.
It's been hard to watch. Honestly, I was one of the like 25% of fans. I had a ticket for the Indy 500 this year, and I didn't wind up getting to use it. And honestly, it hurt more that there weren't any women.
Yeah.
It did to not get to use my ticket. Like, I was more upset about the fact that Pippa Man didn't wind up getting a ride for the race than I was that I wasn't going to get to go. So that wasn't fun. And the fact that that Claire Williams isn't acting as a team principal anymore, it kind of took away one of the high-profile female figures in motorsports. So now you look at F1 and I think it's all male team principals now. I'm not super familiar with it. And all male drivers. So there's not a high profile. So it's another sport or another division of motorsport that you look at it, and there really isn't a very visible female figure anywhere in it. So it looks like a man's sport from the outside looking in, even though it doesn't have to be at all.
Yeah. Andrew, what would you like to see change for your demographic, and how would you like to be involved in that?
Yeah, I think you and Jenna are pretty spot on here. I think I guess from a mixed race perspective, what we could do better is just get more exposure and have this be a more open avenue as a career path or even just a hobby. I in general would love to see better diversity, both racial, racing, and gender wise, at the racetrack. Because I believe, racing, like sports in general, is a barrier breaker. It's a place where we can all come together and enjoy one common thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly wish there were policies in place. I'm hopeful for the future, but that would give people the chance to know about racing as an avenue and, perhaps have the economical footing to get involved. And I certainly would like to see the big ticket racing series like NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, be involved with local small grassroots level racing, to achieve more diversity at the grassroots level. And I know NASCAR has certainly made their efforts with that, with the Drive for Diversity program and with that diversity internship program to get, more variety into the sport. So I want to see that continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
I like what Jenna said about exposure, right? Getting to see someone who looks like you, because that reminds you that it's possible. I'd also like to think about the next step, which is the actually making it feasible. We know that racing is prohibitively expensive, and I use that adverb for a reason. And I wish that racing is not going to get cheaper. I mean, I agree. I like what Briggs and Stratton and Margay have done with the Ignite series, just kind of turnkey, sometimes arrive and drive situations. And I know that there are a handful of organizations that work with inner city youth to get them into karting. What I would like to see is if there's some, I guess, kind of like a scholarship situation or some sort of sponsoring situation where I'd like to see more people of color get into the sponsorship roles. I'd like to see some sort of structural ladder system, just because it's even coming from a a financially stable background, it was kind of you're jumping through hoops and trying to figure out what you need to do. There's no real clear path for how you get the backing to move up to each level. I've gotten lucky in that way, but it's still been difficult. And the other thing, and I realized this when I was working with Nesby. I'll say this about the Black community. I think this is true of most cultures. The Black community is not monolithic, right? We're not all the same. And I think that one thing that I found that I'm coming to grips with is that I might have made the path easier for someone like me. I got lucky in that I've got a name that's racially ambiguous, and I've got a voice and an accent that's pretty racially ambiguous, right? But I would like to see people come in, and here's an example. You see Lewis Hamilton get flack or at least at first got flack for his braids and going into the hip hop sphere, and I'd like to see motorsports be welcoming for not just for people who even being from a different culture still sound a certain way or speak a certain way or who assimilate, but I'd like to see it be be open to I guess even more types of people from each demographic.
Yeah.
Does that do you get what I'm saying? Or
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So, I guess last question for everyone: what advice do you have for other members of your community who are interested in getting involved in motorsports? Jenna, if you want to take that one first.
Honestly, just like I said, the way I'd sum it up is just go for it. There's, say barriers are something that has to be, like, it's not just going to go away on its own. So we ultimately have to push back against it. So I think, yeah, the simplest way to change things is just to have us not be afraid to do something. For like girls coming up who want to do something with racing, it would just be go for it. Don't listen to the older voices in your life that might be saying that, like, oh, that's not for women. They don't know what the world's going to be like in 20 years. So it's not, I don't know. Kind of just do it anyway, basically, is the way that I would sum it up. Motorsports it's a good environment for feisty people and feistiness. So we might as well just not
listen. This is going to be another phrase of ours. Motorsports, just do it. Even though that might be trademarked already.
No, I like motorsports.
Sure.
How about motorsports be feisty?
I like that. Jenna, you have officially come up with another phrase for us on this show. Thank you. Andrew,
okay.
What advice would you have for other members of your community who are interested?
I would kind of echo what Jenna said. Just go for it. Don't be afraid of what other people might think of you. You never know how it might turn out. And trust yourself and, your passion for whatever you do. And, if you do go for it, it may not turn out exactly like you want or even like you anticipated, but you will be happy that you did what you felt like you wanted to do, instead of just sit back and do what you think, would be the most acceptable thing in society, whatever that may be. You gotta stay true to yourself. Don't be subjugated by some kind of cultural attitude that might be there.
Absolutely. And Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'd say, first of all, go to the track. It's not always going to be a comfortable environment, but that you just by going to the track, first of all, get online, look up your local track, look up, Google, people in your demographic who are involved in racing, and go to your local track. I know it might be a hike for some people, but by doing that, you're already 10 steps closer. And when you be yourself, be yourself. Once you get into racing, don't let people tell you, that you have to, dampen down who you are, right? Be yourself, because there might be people coming behind you who need you as a role model. And finally, when you get to where you want to be, lend a hand to those coming behind you. In my family, we have a joke about people who climb up into the treehouse and pull the ladder up with them. Don't be that person. Gotta pay it forward when you can.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my advice.
A wise person once gave me a chance driving, and all he asked from it was for me to pay it forward. So I feel you on that. So getting to the end of the episode, really what we learned here tonight is inclusiveness is everything. And not just for the sake of inclusiveness. It really, as racers, we want to race against the best. We want to prove ourselves, each of us. We want to prove ourselves against the best. And the only way to do that is to be inclusive, is to have everyone. Because if you don't have everyone to race against, you're just in some elite club that really has no one. So we really need to focus on racing and set aside our differences. Because the fact is, and this is the truest statement, when the helmet goes on, doesn't matter. You can't tell, what somebody's skin tone is underneath the helmet. You can't tell where they're from. You can't tell if they're male, female. It doesn't matter. They're a racer. And we should treat each other in the racing community as such. Now, that doesn't mean be a dick to each other. Like I've been there. Like, everyone hates each other. I mean, I guess that's parity across the board, but not good. So yeah, we need to race against the best. We need to be the best that we can be. We need to lend a hand to others who are deserving, who can't quite do it. We just need to, I guess, to use the Bill and Ted phrase, we need to be most excellent. Really. And the only things really that I can add to this is my background. I haven't had the gender or racial handicaps that come from your backgrounds, admittedly. So that's why I can't say much. The only thing I know of is, I've had the background of being hated on for my medical conditions. And while it is nowhere near the extent, it sucks. I've been a severe asthmatic for, I think, 28, 29 years of my 31 years of living. And that's the reason I got into racing, because I couldn't compete in normal sports. And I wanted to compete in something. And it was not easy. It's still, at times of this day, like a couple years ago, when I had my doubleheader win at Mid-Ohio, that was really, really tough on me medically. Like, it took me about a week to get my lungs back underneath me, because it was, all of 120 degrees out. So I've had that, and then when people get wind of that, it tends to be really tough. And it's a difference when there are people who are looking for differences, and to exploit those differences, they look for anything. Mine's been a little harder to find, but I have that tiny little inkling of an idea. And being bullied in school for that, and because of my weight, because of the medicine I was on for so long and my weight gain, that really hurt me, both in performance and with a lot of other things. I mean, to be blatantly honest, when I was racing through middle school and high school, and with my weight being the way it was, I didn't have girlfriends going to the track with me. I wasn't exactly the number one priority catch, I guess, for anybody in school or at the track. So the rumor got spread around that I was gay, and there was a lot of hatred that came my way for that. And I'm not going to sit here and say that's not true. That's not, I came to sympathize with the LGBTQ community greatly, because I felt a lot of hate around that. And it's just a small inkling. I can't even begin to think of what other people have experienced, like what you've experienced, Chris, what you've experienced, Andrew, Jenna, what you've experienced. So that's something that I wanted to cover in this podcast. That's something why I keep trying to pay it forward. That's why I like to help out who I can. And it's not because of race. It's not because of gender. It's because a lot of other people don't give you the light of day. And it's simply because of a hatred. And that's not the way I want to be. And that's not the way that anyone in the racing community should be. We need to help out those in need who are excited to be here and excited to be part of this. So that's kind of the moral of the story with this. And I hope that's been insightful for everyone here. I hope that's been insightful for all our listeners and viewers. And I think this has been a stellar episode tonight. And I want to thank everyone. Jenna, thank you.
Thank you. So this has been, really good to get to talk about this stuff with you all.
Yeah, it's been great. Andrew, thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. I guess for the second time, I thought this is a really insightful discussion. I hope, those listening out there, take something from it and feel something, I guess, furthermore.
And then Chris, thank you, even though you're here all the time.
Yeah, I never leave.
But I value your opinion greatly. I value each of you greatly. And I think our listeners should value your opinions too, even though I shouldn't tell you guys what to do, but you're listening to us, so I've got you. But thanks everyone for being here. So that's going to kind of wrap it up for this week. I think this has been a great topic. Chris, what do we got on the docket for the next show?
Vintage karting was one of the things we talked about with the Vintage National or the VKA race at Whiteland coming up.
Oh, well, we will plan on vintage karting.
Yeah.
We'll plan on vintage karting, and I don't know if that's going to be a guest episode. Andrew, it seems like you're going to be the recurring guest. So that'll be neat to get your opinions on some things. We will get that all worked out. Jenna, I hope to have you back on here sometime when you have time, because I know your schedule is very busy. So we're going to plan on vintage karting for our next episode. And to remind everybody, please like and subscribe on YouTube. And please check us out on Spotify. And obviously, let me look everything up here real quick. And anchor.fm, off Camber Karting. We are really grateful for you guys listening. So, as I say every week now, remember to keep it on all four and keep on keeping on. And cue the kart sounds. Thanks for listening, guys. This has been Off Camber Karting. Have a good one.